And already, we're already close to 80% or more are metabolically unhealthy. So even if you're not obese, we still have individuals who may not appear to be physically obese or excessively overweight. But if you were actually to look at their internal health markers and look at their labs, like if you were to look at markers of fasting insulin, different markers of prediabetes, A1C, their lipid profile, potentially check their blood pressure, someone may have some sort of indicator that they are in declining state of metabolic health. Yeah. So that number, definitely true from an obesity perspective, but just because you're not obese doesn't mean you don't have internal health issues. And that's a big consideration as well. Welcome to sammillerscience, where you're joining me nearly 2 decades into my personal journey to bridge the gap between macros, metabolism, muscle, and medicine. If you're joining me, thanks for trusting me to elevate your health and realize your true potential. Each week and inside every episode, I'll be sharing methods and models from my coaching journey and my personal experience, as well as the science that you need to achieve whatever specific goals you're working on in your life. Let's jump in to today's show. Welcome back. Inside today's show, we have a special featured interview for you. Over the past 7 to 10 years, I've had the amazing opportunity to collaborate with so many wonderful creators in the health and fitness space. And anytime we're talking about nutrition, metabolism, hormones, gut health, anti-aging, performance, really any topic that would be pertinent for you guys to listen to here in the Sam Miller Science feed, my team and I will take these episodes and we'll either play the full Q&A interview, mashups, or take some of the best monologue style content and bring it to you here in the feed. These topics are meant to showcase past interviews and things that I think are either important, trending, or relevant for your understanding, either in your own health and fitness journey or as a health and fitness coach. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Without further ado, let's jump into this featured replay.
I didn't know this until preparing for this show. Obesity kills more people than malnutrition.
So in 2020, I actually had a tweet about this, guys, during COVID, which was basically the statistics around obesity and then the fact that our solution to it is to come out with a new flavor of Doritos. So we have this conversation realizing, yes, that is an obesity statistic, but how is this impacting things like our immune system and our overall health and what's happened, in recent or last 3 to 5 years, really, right? So I think these statistics are important, but also understand when we're listing this information, number one, you may not fall into the obesity statistic yet. That doesn't mean you're in a good state of health. We've still got problems that need to be addressed, need to be fixed. Number two, this isn't just solely a weight loss issue. Mm-hmm. This is a conversation around cardiovascular disease. This is a conversation around longevity, lifespan, health span, and what we were talking about with children too. And right now, all of this, the conversation we're having around GLP-1s, we have so much funding being shifted towards this pharmaceutical conversation, not realizing or not accounting for really what needs to be done from a nutrition and fitness perspective too.
We love food, but we still sometimes make certain choices to put ourselves in good positions. They're still dependent on the choice you make.
You did this on a recent show, didn't you? You were talking about how you would just crush like a whole sleeve of Oreos.
I can, yeah.
You can, yeah, you could, but you choose to keep it away,
just choose not to buy it.
Choose not to buy it, right?
Yeah.
So that is part of the conversation that I think we need to acknowledge, is that there are folks who have pursued healthier living, despite the fact that they do still want to eat some of those things and or have a desire to kind of,
I'd love to.
You would love to, right? It would be my pleasure. So I think you make a really good point around that. There's still a choice. Now, where we have to be very careful with labeling and things like disease is this idea of it can create a very fixed mindset in individuals where you're like, I have a disease, I'm broken, I have this label. I'm seeing this a lot in not only the fitness industry, medical community, and every sort of area and intersection point and corner across those two industries. We give someone a label, they feel broken, then we sell them a solution to their brokenness, and around and around and around we go. And we continue to look outside of ourselves for these answers when in reality, it takes power away from the individual. It's a very challenging conversation around personal responsibility, because if you accept personal responsibility, you now have the freedom that you acknowledge that every choice that you make for the rest of your life plays into this conversation. Mm-hmm. However, it's also incredibly scary because it means that you got yourself into the situation, but it's empowering because it means you can get yourself out. So it's terrifying and it's hard, but it's also very freeing in a way too. So we can confront this conversation, and that is really the harsh truth, and that friction point is being able to face that and say, okay, the way I've lived my life for the last 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years has gotten me to where I am now. Now, I don't need to spend 10 years, 20 years, or even 30 years getting my health back on track. It could happen in a fraction of the time, and there is a choice that plays into it. Now, in terms of her depiction of what's going on in terms of the different pathways, it's also sometimes referred to as we have the homeostatic and hedonic eating system. So when someone gains adipose tissue or fat tissue, sometimes we have a hard time with that. So typically we have both hormonal or physiological signals that help to regulate digestion and also just mechanical. So chewing your food longer, the actual environment in which you eat your meal, and then the actual expansion of your stomach. Those are mechanical aspects of digestion that help with those feelings of fullness, which is here's where the choice part plays in. If I choose to eat nutrient-dense food that's relatively filling and low calorie, I'm working with that mechanical component of digestion. I may also have some dysregulation from the hedonic eating perspective, right? But I still played a role in getting there too, right? So it is a challenging conversation, and this isn't here to, there's still a disease component in that the body is dysfunctional, right? But we need to be so careful that when that label is applied, someone doesn't just kind of put on this veil of brokenness and then refuse to take action in terms of their own life. I think it really it almost becomes a cultural conversation of us becoming, kind of a victim in our own lives where, with this, how can we have the conversation around, yes, obesity does lead to health complications and there is dysfunction and therefore it is labeled as a disease, but you, the individual, still have the ability to change and make a difference in your own life. Now, whether you choose to do that with medication or without medication should be your own choice. And you should have the ability to make informed consent. And the issue is, I don't know that people are reaching a state of informed consent because they don't have all the information around medication. They don't have all the information around, there's a lot of information available on social media about nutrition and training and things like that. It's not all good information, but I do want people to get to a place where they can make an informed choice about their health that works best for them, while also understanding that we still played a role in getting to where we are currently in terms of that status quo.
It's so multi-layered.
It's super multi-layered. And then it becomes this, that's why it's a conversation around physiology, it's a conversation around psychology, it's a cultural conversation. For some people too, it's how you were raised. And this is where there's that fine line of, we need to take enough ownership to feel empowered to make a change in our life and understand that we have a level of responsibility in terms of our own health, but also your loved ones around you and your community and people who count on you to show up as a healthy person. But there is that conversation around parenting, what you were fed, how you were raised. We have a generation of kids where it's like your mom thought Slim Fast was healthy. And, even looking at like my childhood, right? It was like, well, you can have this box of cereal, but you can't have this one, right? But it was completely like, looking back on it, like makes no sense, right?
All
it's like,
cereal.
Okay, you can have Cheerios and Frosted Mini Wheats, or you can have this, but you can't have Apple Jack. But then you turn it around, and it's like the Frosted Cheerios and the Apple Jacks are basically like very similar macronutrient profile, right? Just understanding that, yes, part of this was you may have been misled by people you loved or people who thought they were doing what was best for you, but they actually were not because of the information that was available to them or what was passed down generationally. I do also think people turn to food. It can be a mechanism for dealing with life's challenge or thinking that we're sort of dealing with life's challenges. I'm not necessarily an expert on that by any means. This is where we have to look at health from a more holistic perspective, as much as that word gets thrown around a lot. Yes, your mental health is going to be impacted by your physical health, and your physical health is going to be impacted by your mental health. We can't really separate those entirely. So if you do have something in your life that you haven't been able to work through and that's impacting your relationship with food and impact with the relationship with exercise, that's important. That's why even very early on when trying to convey this concept to clients and other coaches, I kind of talk about, okay, we have our daily practices, things like, okay, how we exercise, how we eat, do we go for a walk, do we get enough sleep? We have our perceptions, which is like how I view exercise, how I view food, how I view the world, my mindset about things, my attitude, how I experience life. And then that's going to impact my physiology, which is basically my internal health or metabolic status quo, if you will, because it's a byproduct of those two things. Now, some people have very skewed relationships with food. They have a skewed relationship with exercise. And we see this on the other end of the spectrum too with chronic dieting. There are women who've been told since they were 7 years old that they need to be on a diet. And so they're constantly restricting food. It's not the obesity conversation, right? It doesn't get that type of attention, but there are people who have had equally as bad advice, but it's led to a lifetime of restriction, and exercise is this sadistic thing, or like almost like a very vicious pattern of engaging in like, I need to, I have to train every single day. I can't take a day off, or I can only eat 1,200 calories. And that's also coming from a place of How did your parents talk to you about food and exercise? Did you learn to prepare meals at home? Earlier on in your comment, before we talked about the childhood component, you mentioned we're not eating real food. And so people are blaming like steak and eggs and fruit for issues caused by frappuccinos and things you'll get in the middle of the grocery store that are, kind of prepackaged, hypercaloric, not very high micronutrient density. They're very tasty, very easy to overeat, and have large quantities without even really thinking about it. Doesn't really help in terms of any type of feelings of fullness or satiety. So from like a food science perspective that will study what's happening at like more of a brain chemical level, I won't say that that's my specialty. I'm really more of like a physiology, endocrine, nutrition guy. But there's definitely going to be a reaction, and you could find studies to support that like people are having a reaction to, like, for example, why people like soft drinks, sugar, caffeine. There's properties to it that make people want to consume that over time. Yeah. There is a neurological component to it as well. And that certainly will play into it. But most of these people are doing both, right? They're eating the prepackaged foods with a lot of ingredients. They're also consuming sodas with caffeine and a lot of calories. Like it's a multi-layered conversation that's also bleeding into lifestyle. And then it's making it harder to do some of these other things too, like exercise, preparing your meals. So it's a snowball effect, right? It's really more of that snowball effect where I think some of the other compounds we're talking to, or even when they're referencing drug addiction, to me, yes, there is a snowball effect, but there's a lot more of that rapid addictive response and just a level of severity. I don't know. Maybe it's just I went to too many DARE classes as a kid, but like the level of severity of that conversation to me is just a little bit different than, okay, the repeated consumption of food, high calorie drinks, beverages, over time. And there are food additives that will make something more palatable for sure. So yeah, there's studies, maybe I didn't specifically address that enough. 100%, there are studies that will show that you can do certain things to the profile of a food. You make it more hyperpalatable, increase enjoyment, sensations, desire to overeat that food and consume it regularly. I'm not saying that you can't ever enjoy, like it's your 4-year-old's birthday party and you're going to occasionally do something, like you guys have said, occasional deviations, but it's like you made an informed choice that you were going to do it. You knew the consequence of it. And you said, hey, I like this. Like I still eat this from time to time. The problem is if you've been doing that for decades, right? Where are we going to start? Like, where do we draw the line? And I think my perspective is a little bit different in that I follow a lot of folks in like more of the personal development community, a little bit more intense stance on just like food, drinking, exercise, like anyone who's going to yell at you here on like this platform, then all the way to like, I would say almost like too much of like a fitness sensitivity conversation around, or like we're not really blaming people for where they currently are, or we're having a lot of forgiveness and we're going to bubble wrap people with everything. It's like, I think we need to find a middle ground as a society where it's like, I'm not going to bubble wrap you and say that this is okay to do every day for the rest of your life. I'm also not going to necessarily scream at you and say that you can't ever do this like on your birthday, or that you can't go on vacation, or you can't enjoy something that you like. Maybe because with food, there's also a community component, right? There's we look at the actual environmental context of the meal. I do not have a problem with someone sitting with their family and having something. Maybe there's a recipe that your grandma used to make, you make it from home and you enjoy that with people that you love and you're sitting down and attentively eating. That's different. Like, this is a very different conversation. Yeah, that may be a high calorie food that may have sugar in it. That is not the same thing. This is where I think sometimes even in research, right, we lose context for the real world. If I had a client who is like, hey, my great grandma has this recipe for birthday cake, blah, 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 blah. And like this is this tradition and we always do this in my family. That is different than you going through a drive-thru and eating something in the after-school pickup line while you wait to get your kids on Tuesday at 2:45 p.m. That's not the same. Like, they're very different things. And I think we need to also help educate people that like, because our metabolism is adaptive and it is malleable and can shift over time, but it does kind of respond to this weighted average of our behaviors and the lifestyle that we live. So if you're always doing that, if you're always eating these snack foods in the car, and then when you get home from work or you're going to the cafeteria at your workplace and, Sally brought donuts today, it becomes an everyday thing and we never break that cycle. So it's not the once in a time that's the problem. It's that the once became once a day, which became, once an hour. And now you're just doing it all day long. And I don't know that I have all the answers on this, but I think part of it is being able to have some difficult conversations, but also giving people some grace and also not like being a total asshole about it. But there is a middle ground between bubble wrapping people and being like, oh, this is okay. You can continue to do this. It's like, I'm letting you slowly kill yourself. And then on the other end of the spectrum, someone who has lived that more disciplined lifestyle and has come to appreciate that discipline from repeatedly engaging in their behaviors and has reaped the rewards of repeatedly making those choices, they have such a different perspective of how it has enhanced their life that they cannot fathom and understand why someone is still in that place, or maybe they've never even been in that place to begin with. So there's these two polar extremes when I'm just like, we still need to get these people healthier, or we're going to continue to have these conversations